Okay, we're recording. So, welcome to Afterlife University. So, you guys might be watching this on the main group or on YouTube. If you are, then I ask you please hit the subscribe button. Gotta stay in touch. This is a class that we're doing right now about karma. So, I thought this was a really important subject because sometimes we see in some of these communities a tendency to forget about self-responsibility and how we should be thinking about caring about our actions. And so, yeah, I think the subject of karma, even though sometimes it's misunderstood, sometimes it's overplayed, is a really important way to re-remember kind of how we are responsible for our actions, and the things we do can have wider scale repercussions, like in our lives and concurrent or future lives, as well as other people's lives. So that's the essence of karma, and I do believe in it. I know some people say they don't believe in karma, but I think it's just because it's a bit of a misunderstood subject. So what we're going to be doing is looking at the work of Yogananda, and Yogananda was the original out-of-body explorer. So that's why I like his work a lot. There's modern day out-of-body people. I guess I'm included in that list. I think I like Yogananda's work a bit more because there's a bigger perspective about it. So Yogananda encompasses kind of the big picture about our place in the universe and what we're meant to be doing in our lives, and spirituality from like ancient traditions, as well as like the out-of-body type accounts, things like that. This is back in the 20s and 30s, and back around that time. So it also, of course, it predates a lot of the modern stuff that we think about. So it wasn't like the Monroe Institute that created out-of-body writing. Like, this stuff's been going on forever. So let me just pull up the site real quick. All right, here we are. So I'm going to read some of these quotes off, and then I'll provide my interpretation, and then we can weigh in on it when we're done. So as a little bit of a precursor, so despite how much I like to work, I also think there's things still that are not fully understood. One of them is reincarnation, right? So I think something that we've kind of established through a lot of other work, good mediums, people like Marcus Lang and other mediums I know, which is that reincarnation doesn't quite work like people think it does. Maybe it doesn't even quite work like Yogananda thinks it does back when he wrote this stuff, because people have this idea of like linear reincarnation, which is that you live a life here, and then the you that is aware of being you dies, and then is aware of the next life. There's nothing in between or around that. And what we can find, basically asking dead people, is that people like live on what we call like the afterlife, the astral world or whatnot, and are reincarnated here at the same time. So like someone can be living there and here, split between multiple places. And some people say it's because like the group soul type situation fragments off a little piece of itself and shoots that down, and that's what reincarnates. And then that becomes its own kind of separate individual, but it's still attached like on the group soul level to the other incarnations, which now are all kind of like separate individuals, but their minds are still linked to each other, and has the ability to come back together as one unified whole, which some would say, we become someday, when we've had enough incarnations, we want to become like one unified entity that has like the full awareness, full memory of all of the, let's say it's incarnated 500 times. It has the full awareness of all like the 500 different incarnations. And then you can be in that level, and also at the same time still be like able to live like on an astral level, but you'll be very, very popular because you'll be kind of like an exalted level of soul, because you're like, imagine like 500 or 1,000 different people who are now all collectivized into like one entity. So I think that's recognized like when that happens. So this is, I mean, this is the working hypothesis based on different work, different interviews. Anyway, so with that out of the way, so that's kind of how I see reincarnation. Maybe that's something to keep in mind when you're reading some of this stuff. So let's hear what Yogananda has to say about karma. The habits you cultivated in past lives have substantially created your physical, mental, and emotional makeup in this life. You have forgotten those habits, but they have not forgotten you. Out of the crowded centuries of your experiences, your karma follows you. And whenever you are reborn, that karma, consisting of all your past thoughts and actions and habits, creates the kind of physical form that you will have. Not only your appearance, but your personality traits. It is these individually created past life patterns that make one person different from another and account for the great variety of human faces and characteristics. The very fact that you are a man or a woman was determined by your self-chosen tendencies in previous lives. So it's really kind of interesting perspective, because what he's basically saying is that your subconscious, what your attitude, behaviors are like on the grand, like the group soul level, on the bigger perspective, actually even determines your physical appearance. I kind of agree with that. It does seem like there's a physical appearance nature that corresponds to kind of how we are. I mean, maybe as an example, okay, so like Jack Nicholson is like kind of a short, aggressive guy. I don't know what he's doing these days. He must be like in his mid-80s by now if you watch some old Jack Nicholson films. But when you think about it, like his appearance kind of matches his personality. I mean, we could say this about anybody basically. It's almost like the energetic way that they act, what kind of person they are, creates the energetic blueprint for everything about them, how they look. Yogananda would argue even like their future health problems, the way their life goes, like everything in their life is kind of set up on this blueprint that we ourselves created based upon like our energetic like system that we made. Yogananda says, karma is the law of action or cosmic justice based upon cause and effect. Your every act, good or bad, has a specific effect on your life. The effects of actions in this life remain lodged in the subconscious, and those brought over from past existences are hidden in the superconsciousness, the greater subconsciousness, the mind of like your group soul, ready like seeds to germinate under the influence of a suitable environment. Karma decrees that as one sows, so must he or she inevitably reap. So, same quote from the Bible, basically, reap what you sow. Before you act, you have freedom, but after you act, the effect of that action will follow you whether you want it to or not. That is the law of karma. So when you get people kind of involved in the moral relativist areas of spirituality, they say, well, you can do whatever you want because life is a theater and we're just actors in the stage. And basically these people are going against laws of karma because they don't think that there's actions, because they think no matter what, they're going to become like angels playing harps in heaven. The whole Hitler is an angel line of thought, which a couple of misguided people like to put out there, which would be an excellent way to encourage school shooters, right? They might hear that kind of information and think, well, no matter what I do, I'm going to heaven anyway, so why not shoot up a school? So that's why I find that information pretty troubling. But what these all the old spiritual sources say, people like Yogananda, who are master out-of-body travelers, that's not the case. What you'll see is people on this side and that side, and like their whole energetic being, like the whole vessel that they exist in, their individual soul is basically a blueprint of all their actions that they've taken with other people. So how you behave in this life is going to directly affect your appearance and your conditions in the next life. And then if you're incarnating again, hoping to maybe have more opportunities to fix some of those issues, if some of these things became issues, then it's also going to result in kind of the life you might be leading on this side. So if you lead a life that's very, very selfish, and you're doing really mean things to people, and then you cross over, you might find, on the astral side, your life is a continuation. And you may look at other people's lives with envy. It's like, everybody else has such a better life than me. Maybe it's because I was a selfish prick my whole life and I was doing bad things to people. And then that person incarnates here, and they still take all that energy with them, and so they might have kind of a tough life because all the selfishness, maybe that's going to lead to like a kind of I don't know, like it's going to take all that energy with it. Maybe you'll be born into a family with other selfish people, and you may end up in an abusive situation because of that. Who knows? Let's see. So Yogananda says, "You alone are responsible for yourself. No one else may answer for your deeds when the final reckoning comes. You work in the world, in the sphere where your karma, your own past activity has placed you, and can be performed by only one person, yourself. Your failure or sickness or other troubles began with the unwise actions in past lives and the effects of those causes that have been brewing within, waiting for the right time to bubble over." So this is where it gets a little bit controversial. And I really don't advocate what some Buddhists do, because certain people in Buddhist spheres, and as well as like trendy East religious groups of people, that people go off to Bali and feel like they're now spiritually enlightened. They like to blame people for their actions, like, oh, well, the reason you have a disease is because of your karma. Well, this is a really silly way of looking at it, because when you think about it, everybody has bad karma. There's nobody, even these people who think they're like masters, everybody has done things to create negative energy like in their existence. And if that could cause a disease, well, then you're in the same boat as like 100% of everybody on the planet, right? So nobody's in a position to be judging anybody else for having like a disease or a sickness if they believe that this is like an energetic cause caused by themselves, because it's also going to happen to you. And probably the act of judging somebody about their disease or sickness is going to probably create negative karma for you, because you're creating a negative energy towards somebody else, which could maybe come back and affect you. So disease, health, failures, successes, inequalities, equalities, early death, long life, all of these are outgrowths of the seeds of actions we have sown in the past. Why do I kind of believe this? Because when you live life, you ever notice that it's like some people just get this special hand in life? You can't explain why. Like everything goes well for them. They want to do a business venture. They make tons of money. They, if they want to, hold on one sec, I actually need to plug my laptop in. I'll keep talking though. If they want to, they're looking for like a spouse, they end up in a very happy relationship. Basically, like everything just goes really well, and nobody knows why. It's because how come nothing goes wrong in your life? I've known some people like that, and Yogananda would argue it's because they've accumulated all this positive energy throughout different existences, different incarnations, this world, other worlds, and so as a result, all the positive energy just lines up, and so they always attract what they desire. So people's energetic blueprint cause us to come into this world with varying degrees of goodness or evil within each of us. So even though God made us in his image, no two people are alike. Each has used his or her God-given free choice to make something different of themselves. This is why some people suffer for the slightest reason. Others become angry at the least provocation. And there are those who eat endlessly without any self-control. Ouch, I guess he's roasting some of my fellow Americans here. Did God make them that way? No. So what he's saying is that our personality characteristics, including those negative personality characteristics that we don't really know why we have, we can't get rid of, are actually really old. So maybe we've had these for hundreds of years through multiple incarnations from this world and the next. and we haven't gotten over them yet. So we are kind of, born into a situation where we have these personality traits embedded into us, and it doesn't go away at death. It's going to continue into the other side and then continue into our next lives until we can figure it out and begin positively changing. So this is where we go into the Buddhist principle of like right action, which is being able to kind of overcome like your psychological condition or the energetic blueprint, these things that we think have control over our lives, and then kind of forcing us to make the right choice, do the right thing, do something nice for somebody else. And taking the right action consistently will be a thing to ultimately correct our karma, which we can begin doing, right now. So when he says, you created the cause of the problem in the past, and then you must make a greater determination to uproot that problem now. If you're always getting into trouble, don't blame God or anyone else. If you are suffering from disease, financial problems, or emotional upsets, these are things that you can fix now. Again, controversial about the disease stuff, and I also think that perfectly good people can, with perfect karma, could still possibly get diseases or whatnot, because we're in a chaotic world where crap happens to us. We can't really change, can't change that. A man takes birth in a certain family, a particular social and national environment, owing to specific causes, his own past actions. Therefore, man is the architect of his own destiny. One can almost predict what he will be in his next life by analyzing his dominant interests and habits in this one. So when we look at let's look at like different cultural groups. So Americans, Chinese, Russians, they all have like their own like group souls, kind of, right? Personality characteristics, like essences that relate specifically to those cultures. So Americans are pretty different from Japanese. Japanese are pretty different from Australian. So it's really interesting how like these different cultures, they have these very unique, specific characteristics. Well, what Yogananda is saying is that your personality, your karma, and such also determines like what culture, what people you belong to. So let's say somebody in China is living in China, but develops a personality that's as close to being an American, which means they put like those what are those like metal balls that they put on like truck balls, maybe somebody from China is into like some trucks and truck balls, and so they they're more American, and then they die, and then in the next life they decide to make they come back as American, right? And I'm just joking around here. I mean, I don't think all Americans like those truck balls, but the point being is that what Yogananda is saying is that your personality is going to determine what kind of world you go into. Yeah, I did unmute you guys because I don't want to, like, in case you want to jump in and say something, but there's also a lot of like noise coming from you guys. If you guys want to mute yourselves, that'd be good. So Yogananda says, since all effects or seeds of our past actions, our karma, can be destroyed by roasting them in the fire of meditation, concentration, and the light of superconsciousness and right action, there is no such thing as fate. So you make your own destiny. God has given you independence, and you are free to shut out his power or let it in. So that's an interesting point. So basically what he's saying is that there is no such thing as fate. Really, we're the ones in charge of our own lives on super consciousness levels that we may not even fully understand. And that ultimately all these effects can be changed based upon what our conscious decisions are right now. So when we talk about like clearing our karma, basically what this means is being good to other people. and then beginning to fix this kind of like basically negative energy systems that we've placed upon ourselves. And so this is kind of a crazy paragraph. Yogananda says there may be 1,000,000 years of actions of past lives pursuing you. Imagine that, 1,000,000 years. So that indicates to me not just lives on this planet, the extraterrestrial lives, other lives on the astral world. So let's say you have one group soul, and then maybe it's had 2,000 different incarnations. Each one is living its own individual life. Each one may be still living its own individual life, but it's all attached to this one collected entity, and it's been spitting out new lives for 1,000,000 years on this world, on the astral side, on other planets, wherever. And so your personality traits that modern science thinks that we just develop on our own, we're actually pre-programmed, and we're already there based upon hundreds of thousands of possible years since. I don't, one of those mysteries is like, where does like a group soul come from? Where, when does that begin? And I don't know, we talk about there's no linear time, but at the same time, we hear things like this. So maybe there is a point when like a group soul entity actually, sprouts, blossoms, and begins its whole adventure making incarnations. And that could be a really, really old entity. Yogananda says, that is why an ordinary individual finds himself so helpless to destroy the binding effects of his or her karma. He or she feels hopelessly bound by those invisible chains, influences resulting from all the actions he or she chose to perform in past lives, through free will or through prevailing influences. So I think we've all known people like this. They just seem to be continually getting into trouble. And I mean, it's nobody in this class. In fact, so many people I know personally, but I see like even on Facebook, like I see people saying like, help, I'm homeless again, and my life is falling apart again. And then, somebody I know who's like basically like every year it's the same thing. Help, I'm homeless again, my life is falling apart again. You see it happening again and again and again and again. And you're like, how does this person get out of this cycle? They keep becoming homeless. They keep losing their job. They keep running out of money. They keep having like friends or family walk out on them. And like this is like there's something going on with that person, because I know like I probably know like 4 or 5 people like that. Like I don't know them so well personally, but like they end up on my Facebook page and I see them getting into trouble again and again and again. And I'm like, I see this pattern happen to a lot of people. We see this happen to people, especially if like we do any kind of volunteer work or we feed homeless people. Like I feed homeless people a lot in Los Angeles, and like I see people like in these systems that just keep going and going, and you don't know how to get them out. That's why like it's proven not to work when you like give a homeless person a bunch of money. So that's actually been known to be dangerous to homeless people. Is thinking you can fix their problems by just handing them a check. So they've done experiments about this, and they end up right back on the street in within a year, or within 6 months or less, because they have a system in place with their personality, their lifestyle, and the way they see the world that keeps putting them back in that situation. So Yogananda would argue that this is karma. It is the embedded nature of that personality that's like shaped this way based upon many other personalities. And like somebody in a situation like that, instead of just looking at it like on an external basis, like I need to make more money, I need to keep a job, they have to look at it from like a really deep soul level and be like, well, how do I start accruing more positive energy in my life by helping people, or thinking altruistically, or being a good person, taking right action in situations. And Yogananda would argue that is the thing that would elevate somebody out of a situation like that. So it kind of makes sense to me, because we see in the psychological establishment a lot of attempts to fix people like through pills, medications, and therapy. And the therapy I imagine could work if it's a good therapist, but a lot of it rests more on how is that individual, what choices are they making for themselves. You can't force somebody to do it. So everybody has free will. So we have our own free will to make the choices that we want to make. And this really isn't some way to like make people do that. So Yogananda says, this is interesting. Accumulated bad mass karma precipitates war, disease, poverty, devastating earthquakes, and other like natural calamities. During times of prevalent negative vibratory influences, the individual must thus contend not only with his or her personal karma, but also with the mass karma affecting the entire planet. So that's really big too. Somebody else's bad karma can come along and affect you. So somebody you know is a victim of a crime, it's not that they had bad karma, it's that somebody else had bad karma and is placing that out upon the world. Yogananda would argue that natural disasters are also karmatic. I don't think I agree with that, but who knows, he might have a point. Certainly we can see like climate change or whatnot, that the direct effects that people are having on this world are affecting, the way nature is. Even something very objective like that, Yogananda will call that karma. So people making bad decisions creates this blossoming effect and begins affecting everybody and everything, and then that leads to actions, bad things that can happen to us individually, caused by other people or collective bad will. In addition to your karma from the past, what are the influences on your present life? The world civilization is one of them. In whatever era a man, Yogananda always refers to it like with the male pronoun. I find that, this is like the 20s, so it's not uncommon, but I like to do like he or she. In whatever era a man or woman is born, he or she is influenced by the civilization of that age. If one is born in the 8th century, he or she is influenced by that century. You're all dressing, for example, according to the present civilization. God is not your judge. You are your own judge. If you act wrongly, you're going to punish yourself. If you act rightly, you will free yourself. That is the justice of the law of karma. You are dictated to neither God nor angels, but by the law of action. What you sow, you reap. Anything you hate, you also attract to yourself, so that you may learn to overcome that prejudice. This is natural cosmic law. If you really hate a certain type of guy and you keep attracting that kind of boyfriend into your life, you maybe need to like just let go of that energy. Refuse to be bound by karma. It is an old superstition of the ignorant to believe you cannot change your destiny. Too many people misinterpret the meaning of karma, adopting a fatalistic attitude. You do not have to accept karma, but it's still there. Trials in life also do not come to destroy you, but to help you appreciate God better. God does not send those trials. They are of your own making, the effects of conscious or unconscious actions in the past, somewhere, sometime. When you realize yourself as a child of God, what karma have you? Sometimes this stuff is written a little bit oddly. God has no karma and you have none. When you know you are his child, every day you should affirm, I am not a mortal being, I am a child of God. Persons who pass their lifetime satisfying the body and gratifying only the ego, unaware of the divine image in themselves, amass earthly karma. When they die with those unresolved karmic consequences and with unfulfilled earthly desires, they must reincarnate again and again. So this is also kind of where I disagree. This is where I kind of veer away from basically Buddhism. Like just because Yogananda was going out of body, well, I also go out of body. I mean, it's doesn't mean someone is like a beacon of all knowledge. And I disagree with like linear reincarnation. We know that's not the case. We also, the Buddhists go into the stuff about like unfulfilled earthly desires. And so then they take this, in a really weird direction. Because number one, you can fulfill, quote, earthly desires like on the astral plane. So there's no reason to have to incarnate on Earth. But Yogananda argues on the astral plane, our existence there is also an incarnation. So that's maybe the final thing I'm going to throw in, just to like mess with everybody's heads, is that when you live on the astral side, that's also an incarnation. So to be non-incarnate is beyond some higher echelon stratosphere. But whether you have a life here or on the other side, these are both incarnations, and so it's the same rules, the same concepts apply. Unfulfilled earthly desires. I think that idea, in my opinion, is taken out of context a lot, because you see Buddhists and you see people in the East religious spectrum say that, oh, you know what, you like chocolate too much, you have to give that up because that's an earthly desire. And really, I find all that type of talk to be bullshit. I think an unfulfilled earthly desire is like, let's say you're obsessed with making money, and you read a Fortune magazine every day, you watch celebrities, and you're just lusting after like freaking what was that show, like MTV Cribs, so they have like some spoiled rich kid and they do a tour of their house, and people are absolutely obsessed with that. They haven't quite figured out that there's like much better like spiritual qualities to life. So like, what's better, being around friends and family and people you love and having adventure and having a good time, or finally getting that stupid house only to find out you have no friends left and you're just like hanging out in there by yourself? So that's kind of going on a poor spiritual path. But if you have that, someone has that obsession with having that money and that status, and then they die, they're going to find that they're going to be really like unsatisfied because they're still obsessed and thinking about this. And and at some point, they're probably going to have to become like really wealthy and be able to have all those things, just so that they can realize, hey, this wasn't the end all be all. And then that'll basically free them up to be able to live their life. That's the way I see it. Unfortunately, Buddhists tend to misinterpret that, in my opinion, and then they get really carried away with that. So that's basically the presentation that I have here about karma. Some interesting points that, a lot of it I agree with. Obviously, a few points I don't. But I'm going to go ahead and, do I need to unmute anybody here? No. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you guys. Let me stop the share. What do you guys, by the way, hi Brenda. What do you guys think about this? And did that resonate with you? Do you agree with that? What do you think of Yogananda? What do you think of some of those ideas that he has? Anybody?
I struggle with karma. I struggle with the whole idea of it. So this is a hard topic because, like anything with religion, we seem to just make up religions and stuff like that. There's probably a little bit of truth to it, but I would imagine most of it's wrong.
What kind of things do you think might be wrong?
Just this accumulation of bad things. The idea of having to be reborn and then screwing up so bad, and then having to start all over again is just it's crazy. It's like, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you take the chance?
So what about the concept? Let's see if this changes that perspective a little bit. Well, what about the concept that when you die, you're still you, and then you never, the part of you, quote, that is aware of being you, is only going to be aware of that person until at some point, like there's like this merging with like a higher self, right? So that means that you die, but you never personally as you experience reincarnation. Like you go off to live like on the other side. But you have reincarnations happening outside of your awareness, being created by like the group soul. So you yourself never have to be reborn, but there's like pieces of you that you might not even know about. What about that? What happens if you toss that idea into it?
Well, I think you've got something there. I mean, I have this sneaky suspicion that some of the individuals that say that this is nothing more than a play or some sort of act is probably correct. But again, I don't see why your actions would then condemn something else to some sort of torture or pain. I don't really get that in the future. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. And that's the difficult thing with this topic, because again, it's funny that people take this idea and then they create like a philosophy that to a lot of reasonable people is quite offensive or harmful. So we had the lady in Afterlife Topics who was from India, and like I think she like lost her daughter, and that there were people in her family telling her, "Oh, it was your karma responsible," and she was devastated. So like we were all trying to reassure her, "No, that's not the case. This is almost like a superstition in your culture that people would believe that." And even with this, the thing is, though, I don't even think Yogananda would say that, because Yogananda is basically saying that there's this energetic blueprint that's in the world that affects everybody, and bad things happen to people as a result of other people's bad karma. So let's say, for example, all the negative energy of bad karma has caused, like, in his opinion, a natural disaster. And this to me is definitely kind of a primitive way of looking at like. How do you say like geology, So maybe back in the old days, they didn't know that earthquake is caused by tectonic plates shifting and all that. And they think, oh, it must be because we're all sinners. So it's kind of a variation of that. So I don't exactly agree with that. But as an example, a tragedy hits somebody else, and that's because of other people basically making bad choices in their lives. But again, I think people misinterpret even those teachings, and it creates that kind of like ridiculous interpretation of karma. Does anybody else have any thoughts about that, or questions or ideas?
No, I kind of agree with Corey. I have a hard time with the whole karma thing also. I mean, I do believe that we come here to learn certain lessons, but I don't think that I mean, I really don't know what I think when it comes to that. I just have a hard time swallowing it, to know that things happen to people. You're good here in this life, like even in my own situation and even in Paula's situation, like our children transition to the other side. What could we have possibly done in a past life that would have been deserving in some way,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think even with like what Yogananda was saying, like, I don't think Yogananda would say that somebody lost like a child because of their own actions. I think Yogananda references karma in relation to like things that are part of your characteristics, right? So if you're born into a wealthy family, that might be related to karma. If you're born into poverty, that might be related to karma, as well as your personality attributes. So he would argue that you are born with specific personality traits that date back possibly millions of years, and that those are the things that we need to be able to work on. And he might also argue the same thing about disease, but of course, also I disagree with that as well. But I think, in my opinion, where this converges with some level of truth is when we think about, having existences that that span back before this existence, right? So we could call it lives before, pre-birth memories, or, multiple incarnations, whatever you want to call it. So I think, in my opinion, where this information probably meets closest to truth is where we talk about the fact that those lives affect our personalities here in this life and may affect our actions, right? So so if we're carrying like a negative psychological trait, that's going to keep following us until we find a way to get rid of it. Not necessarily that every single thing that happens to us is related to something on that level. What do you guys think about that angle of looking at it?
Yeah, it's a tough topic, and I think nobody really knows exactly. I think the things is like I believe that we are here we are a soul in this, earth body, in this physical body, to try to learn some to do experience. And so we learn and we grow through our experience. But I have a hard time to think that bad things, we get punished because we did bad things on the other lives. You know, I don't know. There's kind of it's a kind of hard for my situation too. You know, like Brenda said, you know, I struggle with that too.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't think anybody gets punished. And I think that's also could be like a misinterpretation, even of some of this kind of work. I mean, this is the thing because I think that there's two traps. Okay, so I think completely buying into the karma stuff, like what Yogananda was talking about, could be an issue because then it leads to some of those like philosophical issues. But I also think there's an issue with completely discounting it, right? Because the main takeaway point involves free will. So it's the idea that those things that happen to us are in some way things that we have like a higher level of control over that we don't realize. And so like that can just apply, you know, specifically, you know, people who are in a cycle of like, like I was talking about earlier, they're continually homeless. And they, you know, these bad things keep happening on repeat to them again and again. So these principles are that people have the ability to overcome those situations. They just don't realize it yet. And so that's how some of this stuff can be very beneficial to people. So people read this stuff. People have gotten involved, like in Buddhism, and they've been able to pull themselves out of situations in life because it kind of reinvigorates a sense of free will, that they have control in their lives by taking right action that they didn't know that they had. So like with right action, you have to overcome like an impulse not to do something to be able to do the right thing. So if you feel like you don't feel like helping somebody out that you know that you're in a position where, you know, you could do something, say something, or contribute something that's going to really help them, but a part of you is like, no, I'm lazy, I don't feel like doing it, I don't want to do it, I'm not happy with doing that, I don't want to get involved, but you also know inside, but I need to. The Buddhists would say, okay, so you have to take right action and then do that thing that you know in your heart that you need to do, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it's something you don't want to do. So I think regardless of somebody's Buddhist or not, or believes in like some of these karmic principles, I think that concept is really, really beneficial, because I wouldn't say I'm an ex-Buddhist, but I would say that I came out of more of the East religious spectrum. And that's why, like, later on, I rag on Buddhism a lot in some of these concepts, because I got really turned off by sort of the fundamentalist issues that come about from it. But I can still see, but that thing in life, though, is black and white. That's why I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I want to still look at some of those concepts to be like, well, what does work for people, and what is beneficial. So the concept of right action makes a lot of sense. So again, the Buddhist Yogananda would say that that's how you fix your karma, is by continually just doing the right thing for people, and then that'll directly affect your life, make your life better. What do you guys think about that concept? Is that more palatable than karma, as Yogananda talks about it?
I believe in the concept that you said. I think that it resonated with me, that because it's true, because you make a better world, a better, for everybody. If everybody will act on the concept that you said, it will be like in a much better shape in this world. So I really believe it.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. Like,
it makes sense to me. Yeah.
So, so that probably of all the Buddhist concepts, that's the one that still makes the most sense to me. And I still think about this one like as I'm leading my life. Like, I don't think much about karma since I kind of gave Buddhism up a bit. But rereading like Yogananda stuff, it kind of got me thinking more about it. But it also got me thinking about the right action principles again, because I almost feel like every day there's an opportunity for right action, for doing the right thing. And I think that probably the issue that most of us have is that when, basically we're thinking, I really should send a note to my uncle or my cousin or see how they're doing, right? And then you think, well, you know what? I'm not going to mess with that right now. But you know in your heart, for some reason, you need to do it. So I've had situations like in my life where I get that feeling I need to do something, and then I don't do it. And then I find out, like, when I was thinking of doing it, like something was going on, like that person passed away or something. You know, like I was being given this feeling like I need to do something, and I was ignoring it. And that was like my one opportunity to like talk to somebody, and then like a few days later they pass away. Has something like that ever happened to anybody?
No,
It happens to me all the time, but not in that context.
Yeah. What kind of?
Well, it's almost like a knowing of when I'm working or something like that. It's knowing what I'm going to have to do, what tools I'm going to need to use, what things I need to bring. And if I don't listen to that third voice, there's laughter, and there's me realizing that I should have listened. So that happens a lot. So nothing, it's a little bit more work related, but it's definitely real. It's definitely there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Paul, are you going to say something?
No, I was saying, that I try to, my philosophy of life is like, I try to do that, to follow my heart and try to do the right things, and sometimes even if it's like a work to do, but then you realize it, it makes you feel good. And then I think that, and I did a kind of, but, I had like a aunt from Italy that, she lost her kid when my first cousin, when he was like the same age of Nicholas, 20 years old. And so that's like 28 years ago. And then I lose my kid too. And then she got like, she was really different compared the context in Italy. Back then, everybody was very religious and Catholic, so, but she was like already kind of ahead of time, because she was already having like out-of-body experience. She was having contact with her kid, and so kind of the family kind of isolated her because they thought that she went crazy because she lost her kid. But so when this happened to my son, after it took a while for me, I wanted to contact her, but because we kind of didn't work too much each other with the families. And then I was thinking, and then finally it took some decision, and then I contact her, and now we talk almost every week, and it's incredible how she's so ahead. She was so ahead of her time, because she's telling me all these things that basically I'm studying and we discuss, and she just by herself, that just, she was going out of body and doing all this experience, and she didn't realize it, and she thought that she was going crazy, but no, it was just like that. And so I think that, like you said, sometimes do the right things. It takes some decision, but then that was the things that you're supposed to do.
Yeah, so you made a decision. So you took right action to contact, and then that led to all these positive things happening.
All these things, and now I made her like so. Somebody, now she feels so happy because somebody believes her, and then I talked with her daughter too, that they were fighting, so I kind of reconnect the families, my dad went to visit her, and I kind of, from one of my action, I reconnect all, the family, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of, I guess, that concept in action, right?
I believe it. I try to live with that philosophy, if I can, follow my heart.
So that's kind of the so from the Buddhist perspective, doing things like that will fix your character, fix your soul, which is also called fixing karma. So basically, continually taking the right action will align you in a way that nothing you're doing is leaving like a negative blueprint for the rest of your life. And it's almost like, even if you don't believe karma, like people like Yogananda discuss it, I almost feel like that what we also did, there was a different kind of karma, and this is something that I kind of leaned toward later on when I was rejecting a lot of these ideas for the same reasons that you guys brought up earlier. I began to also look at like another possibility, which is kind of like objective karma. So let's say you're trying to explain the concept to somebody who's like an atheist, doesn't believe in anything, quote, supernatural, and doesn't believe there's any kind of any kind of anything happening like on a higher power level. So the way that like atheist types of people would view karma is that it has to do with like the direct results of actions in your life right now. So an example being like when you're doing the thing that you know that you need to do, when you're taking that right action, that creates opportunities and it fixes things and helps heal wounds and things of that nature that will directly manifest in your life without any kind of a supernatural cause behind it. So as an example, let's say you have a friend or relative or somebody that you know if you get in touch with them, it's going to really positively affect their life. Doing that really positively affects your life. And you don't live with like that guilt of wondering, I wish I had done X, Y, Z. And then if you do that, it helps your mental health and then brings new opportunities into your life. So sometimes people who are really successful, like financially, they're always doing the right thing. Like they know they need to, if they want to make their business work, they need to do these particular things when they wake up, and they're choosing not to be lazy about it. So they're taking that right action. So they're resisting the internal feeling like, I don't feel like doing this. I don't want to get out of bed. I want to go, go party instead. I want to go do something else. They're resisting that kind of external stimulus, and they're doing what they feel they know inside they have to do. And then that creates a positive lifestyle. So that's also kind of one way of looking at this, which probably has more appeal. When it goes into like when this topic goes into the supernatural level, that's when we start going into areas that either we can't comprehend it or it's misinterpreted to mean that people are like deserving of bad things that happen to them. And that's kind of when like East religion stuff jumps the shark a little bit. What do you guys think about like that concept of the secular way of looking at karma? Does it make more sense than the other way of looking at it? No opinion. Well, that's okay. Yeah, I know. Probably it's this topic that is, like you guys say, it's a difficult one, but it's also difficult to avoid because no matter where you go in this area, people will keep bringing up karma. And then people always, it's basically in the vernacular, I don't want bad karma by doing these things. And one thing I definitely believe in is the idea that doing negative things in this world has repercussions, right? So I think in some way to have no belief in karma at all means that you're going on the stratosphere of saying that you can do whatever you want and there's no repercussions like in the afterlife. So you can go out and kill people, and then you pass away, then it's all angels and butterflies, right? So at its bare minimal, I think what karma would mean is that that's not the case, that you take that negative energy with you and then that's projected out when you die. And a lot of us do like the out of body stuff, like we can confirm that Jurgen's work. That's kind of like indirectly showing like what people will call karma in effect. So you do something really bad here, then you die, you take that energy with you, and then you're on that side. And then you're in a really bad condition. Do you guys agree with that, or do you guys have any issues with that idea?
That sounds better.
Yeah,
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally believe that. Over here, people don't go around killing people. I don't think about, killing somebody because most people have morals, and I think people who commit crimes like that are obviously a little mentally unstable. But I do believe that when they get over to the other side, if that's what you consider, if that's karma, yeah, then that's karma. That's the way that I would believe it. If you're really bad and you do something like that over here, you're not just going to be able to progress and be with all the higher beings. You're going to be in a realm lower and associated with people that are more like you.
Exactly. And when you think about that, that is karma. That's the same concept that Yogananda was talking about. It's just without some of the bells and whistles. So because how does that happen in effect, right? So let's say you lead a really selfish life, materialistic, and you don't kill people, but let's say you're robbing people. You work in real estate and you're selling like bad mortgages to people, whatever it is, right? so what is it that's collecting around you that results, like when you die, you end up in a place that's fitting for the kind of person you are, and then you end up basically in, not a very nice environment when you die. So that means basically there's some kind of an energy that's being imprinted by your actions, and it's affecting you like on a soul level. And then when you die, you automatically appear in the place that best fits you. So that is karma. That's the same thing. So believing in that means you also believe in karma. So it's one of those things. That's why I say that even though it's a difficult topic, it's kind of, we can't really get away from it in that sense, because because that's like 90% of what karma is, which is that concept that we basically get placed where is energetically fitting to us.
But even like in your situation, Cyrus, like the way that you've talked about your parents, your father seems like he would have more negative karma than, like, your mom seemed like she was a nicer person. She didn't have all the issues. So why would they be together over there? Wouldn't he be at a lower realm?
Well, that's I think people misinterpret. It's a great question. I think people misinterpret the realms as well, because they think it's all firmly separated. But I think the separations occur with whole gradients of realm, right? So like the middle astral level, let's say that has like 80% of us. And then there's like a lower astral level, which is basically inhabited by people who are, a whole gradient worse than the average person. So like somebody like my father, tons of psychological issues and inner hatred and addiction problems. But at the same time, like if my father like saw somebody in trouble, like he was always, his whole life, he was always being very altruistic, sometimes at his own expense. So, I mean, he wasn't like living a life where he was just using and abusing everybody. And if he were, he could have maybe been on this even lower spectrum level where there's like this huge division between souls, right? So, and I think the best way for me to put it is like, do you ever find yourself in a social situation around people, excuse me, who are not really very quality people? Mm-hmm. And you go into the room, and then the atmosphere it feels very thick. Because it feels like instead of people, basically, a fun environment, everyone kind of feels united together, right? So everyone's having fun, and you feel like energy bouncing off of everybody. Well, what if somebody's really closed off to everybody else and thinking very selfishly? You put all those people in a room together, and it's like you feel like everyone is like plotting against everybody else, right? So, I mean, I've been in situations like that. Back in Los Angeles, I feel like it's all over the place. You go to like a cocktail party, and people are just in it for themselves, and they're looking for like they want to network, or they want to make money, or they want to meet somebody, find a client, but they're not connecting with anybody else. So like at a lower astral level, it's kind of like everywhere you go, there's this deep disconnection between everybody else. And for somebody who is like more connected, more empathic, and if they go around that, it's like really jarring because no one's connected to each other, right? So that's a whole separate gradient. Then you have like this middle level, then you have this upper stratosphere where it's this kind of much more loving unity consciousness. And like even the middle astral will be really dismal by comparison. So I guess to answer your question, so basically both my parents ended up kind of in this middle astral, which is basically filled with, imperfect human souls, people, who have their problems, have issues, and sync up together. But the lower, like the middle astral level is way nicer than this world by comparison. And then by comparison to like the lower spectrum is worse than this world. So to give you some example of how that feels in contrast. So basically, you have to be leading a really selfish, really messed up life to end up on that lower spectrum. But there's enough people out there, I think, to populate that kind of place. And then, Jürgen goes way more into that than I do. I've never been on that level in my out-of-body stuff. I think I'm too afraid to go there. But Jürgen has toured like the worst of it. And that takes a lot of guts. And I think he's helped out by like a guide or something like that. But hey, Brenda, does that kind of answer your question? Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, that answers it. Yeah.
Yeah. But but so to me, the way I see karma now is basically like we discussed, is that your actions have that energetic blueprint, at least in your next. So when we say next incarnation, life on the astral side is technically an incarnation as well, isn't it? So we could say your actions will have an effect on your next incarnation. If you do bad things, it's going to push you into a lower realm, and you could end up in that situation for a long time until you can get out of it. Now, fortunately, that's nobody in this group. It's probably like very few people, and like up to like the 8,000 people in the main afterlife topics. But anybody who's like living a life where they're thinking consciously about themselves and their actions and doing good for people, it's just like the average person in that category doesn't really have to worry all the time about this kind of stuff. And then also, not to like criticize Buddhism too badly, but that's also where I see like a religious control mechanism sometimes happen with like Buddhist philosophies, because they want, how do you get the average person to keep coming to the temple and keep putting money in the donation jar? Well, keep them in fear, right? So, we see that like with Catholicism and whatnot, are you going to go to hell? Buddhism does the same thing, but it does it much more covertly. So say that the average person needs to be freaked out that they're messing up their karma, and this is going to have some bad ramification in the next life. And then the Buddhists, of course, they go way out. So Yogananda is like way on like on the rational spectrum. But if you go hang around Buddhists and live in like Thailand, places I've lived, like they literally think that you're going to come back as an ox. You're going to be reincarnated as a donkey if you act selfish or whatever it might be. And so they tell the average people, you have to be afraid of these things happening to you. So how do you fix that? Go to the temple, donate money to the church, basically, and hear what the priests, in this case the Buddhists, have to say, and then you can be continually making sure that you don't come back as a donkey. So again, that's one of the big issues like with Buddhism, and it's why like I would never like officially follow that path. But I also think that there is a kind of a higher spectrum, bigger picture going on, and that relates to cause and effect, and negative actions here attaching to us energetically, carrying on to the next life, and how that can go really, really wrong if somebody's leading a very selfish life. And I also think it has a lot of relevance to people who like are really committed because they want to go to like a higher plane, a higher realm. And there's this one woman who sometimes appears in the forum who really dislikes the idea of like the kind of middle astral level, and she wants to go to a much higher spectrum. If that's somebody's prerogative, then probably they need to be thinking about like achieving kind of like a unity consciousness, loving state of mind here in this life as much as they possibly can, so that when they die, they don't go to the middle astral, that they go to like a higher level. So that's, when, people want to, and in that context, it makes sense to put so much emphasis on, quote, karma, or kind of taking the right action continually and becoming an even more like loving person than you already are. If, among those people who really want to, I guess get the best deal when they cross over. And some people are more on that page. Like, I'm not as much on that page, because to me, like, there's so much to explore and do just on the places that I've seen and been in out of body experiences, that it's kind of like why do I want to get to the end first? Why do I want to go to the top first? There's so much to explore and do just on the levels I've seen, and since I do like travel exploration, like I'm less interested in just like going to the top. That's just me. That's the path I'm on. Getting kind of close to the end here. So do you guys have any more thoughts about karma? I know it's a tough subject. Any final points, especially if anyone else might be watching this video? Do you have any thoughts or ideas that maybe you want other people to hear about? No.
Have you had any, since you've been there, a little different from what we're talking about, but since you've been over there, have you had any, in the Philippines, have you had any good out-of-body experiences?
I haven't so much. Wait, something did happen. Okay, wait, let me back up. So I can't always say for sure if something's an out-of-body experience, because I have to hit certain criteria. You know, like, do I feel myself leaving my body? Do I have full lucid awareness? And if in those situations, I will immediately report the experience, like in a journal, and maybe I will write about it at some point in the future, talk about it, because I can learn a lot. But I have experiences where I have these very vivid memories of things that I think are probably happening to me on the astral side, which I don't have full access to all those memories. So it's like bits and pieces, and it's fragmented and probably being interfered with by dream patterns. So you have like the hallucination type dream stuff, like punching a hole into the experience. So a couple nights ago, I very vividly had this experience that I was in a place that I know I've been to before on like an astral level. And best way I could describe it is that it's like an area of like the Middle East on like the astral spectrum. So like, I want to say like ancient like Babylon or something like that. Like, you know, we see like modern day Iraq. And I vividly remember being with a group of people and being in like this ancient area because I specifically wanted to see elements of like these ancient civilizations, like the ancient Mesopotamians, and look at their culture as, you know, as it still exists to an extent. And that we were talking to like a guide, and I don't mean like a spiritual guide, but I mean like literally like a regional guide who was going to show us some of these places. And, you know, like the ancient Mesopotamians, they had like ziggurats and kind of like pyramid type structures and ancient cities and things like that. And so we were in like this desert Middle East type environment. And then, you know, we were on like this tour, and you know, on that side, what would be ancient history to us may be living history there. So the very Mesopotamians who maybe lived there, you know, thousands of years ago are still maybe potentially living there or visiting that place. So like the culture is still alive. And I remember very vividly, like it's very beautiful. Like it's like kind of the desert, but it's like if you look up at the sky, it's like, you know, normally if we see like nighttime, we see stars, we see the Milky Way. But imagine if you can see like crystal clear vision of like the whole night sky, like nebulas and colors and all this really amazing stuff. Like you can like look far into the universe, but like by just looking up. And I remember like seeing that, like nebulas and the cosmos being crystal clear with like ruins and ancient buildings, and like I interpreted it to be like possibly like ancient Mesopotamian civilization, like spread out. And then I was with a guy who had like a beard, and he was like a student of history, and he was really excited to be there, and so was I. And I also, it's like I recall having gone from one location to that location really quickly, like I teleported. Like in one moment I was doing something else. It's like, okay, well, let's go check this place out. And then boom, I'm there. So it wasn't a full out-of-body experience because I don't have full lucid awareness. So it's more like on the dream spectrum. But thinking about the context of what I experienced, like I'm positive if I had gained lucid awareness during that, then I would have been an astral projection thing. And then I would have been able to really experience that firsthand. So yeah, that happened a few days ago. I don't mean to go on and on about that.
No, that's pretty cool.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
Because I've been to a place like that before, at least with the sky and stuff like that. But were the ruins actually there, or were they like almost like paintings or plates that were kind of stacked up one behind each other, where you could see different scenes?
That's interesting. It almost sounds like you had like an akashic experience of some kind. No, in this case, there was like an actual like not modern, but like a community or a city, and that, you know, it had buildings and had like, you know, kind of like a Middle Eastern town. And then there were like there was like this ancient area like that was out into the desert. So you can kind of begin in this one space, and then you like head out into the desert to go check this place out. And then there was like real ruins, but ruins is like, you know, not our definition, because like they're not in ruin, right? So it's more like ancient civilization that, you know, still has, like, it's a little bit alive to some extent, like you still have influence going on. Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts about that before we get out? But yeah, it was definitely a cool one. I mean, and there was some dream elements as well. Like I was with, like, you know, dreams, they starts implanting stuff from your subconscious and it kind of messes the experience up. Like I was with like some like YouTube personality that I've watched sometimes, and I think what's happening is like somebody I was with maybe resembled that person, so my brain was filling in the blank and say, oh, it's like this guy you watch on YouTube. So that's why you could have a really vivid experience. But if you're on the dream spectrum, suddenly it dips into nonsense. So suddenly, you know, you're hanging out with like Super Mario. You're like, what the heck is the Mario Brothers doing here while I'm out there exploring this place? Because when it's on the dream spectrum, like your brain is substituting like information that it knows to try to make sense of what it's seeing. And that's why like the dream spectrum messes up the out of body experience, and you can't accurately report on it because you don't know if things are being like misinterpreted that way. Anyway, well, I guess I'm going to get out of here. Thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks for being patrons. A little bit of a tough topic to get into, I know, but at the same time, you know, there's elements that probably have to be discussed or fleshed out. So yeah, I guess that's it. I hope you guys have a good rest of the week. I'll see any announcements. I'll try to have this coming month's class schedule put up soon on afterlife topics. I'll be going more into physical mediumship coming along. We do have the guest speaker coming up in a little after next week. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed about the internet because, like, right now it's great here in the hotel, but I'm going back to Indonesia. Last time I was in Indonesia, the internet was a bit sketchy. I had to get a phone with like a good wireless plan before I was able to really use it because like it just wasn't working in my apartment. So I'm going to hope that where I'm going this time, they have that figured out. So keep my fingers crossed about that. And we'll find out next class. I mean, there's a chance next class could be canceled because it's going to be right after I arrive there, like the next morning. If I haven't figured out the internet situation yet, then I may not be able to do class or have to reschedule it for like a day later. We'll see. But I guess that's it. All right, I guess I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for coming by.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye, everybody. Bye.